Hey guys, running around a bit today, but we had to get you the next installment of our exclusive interview with Representative Jamie Raskin, just a firecracker, a pillar of strength in the House who has taken on Republicans while dealing with the loss of his son and cancer. He's amazing. And here, he will remind you that you cannot understand anything Republicans do in this country, in the House, without understanding what Vladimir Putin wants here. They're tied together. They are on a leash. He is walking them around like the little puppies they are. Let me kick it to Jamie Raskin for a second.
Let's talk about that impeachment inquiry. Your point-by-point dismantling of the Republican Party on it was, in my view, masterful. It went pretty viral. We tried to help that along with our own video, which I urge people to check out on YouTube on the Blue Amp channel. It was a pretty brutal watch, honestly, and it was super uncomfortable for me. Did you feel a little uncomfortable for James Comer sitting next to you? He maintained a pretty good poker face, but oh my gosh, I could just see all of this kind of crumbling on him. But second, and maybe more important, is there a part of this fake impeachment inquiry that stands out or hasn't gotten enough attention in your mind that we can give some attention to right now?
First of all, I got to say, I felt a teeny bit sorry for Kevin McCarthy yesterday, but that just shows you I'm a liberal. I hate to see these entire life and career dreams smashed and crumbling like that, even though he had hollowed himself out and completely prostituted himself to the MAGA. I don't feel sorry yet for James Comer because we're still in the middle of this thing. They are still perpetrating this fraud on the American people, and through Fox News, actually propagandizing their followers to believe that there's some impeachable offense out there, which there's not. And thank you for watching that hearing, which I think was a decisive 5 or 6 hour refutation, demolition, takedown of everything that they've been saying based on 9 months of aimless fishing expedition, empty-handed wild goose chase pursuit. Nothing is there. When you ask about what is it we're missing, one thing we're missing is the geopolitics of this. Putin, who says that the dissolution of the Soviet Union was the greatest tragedy of the 20th century, which is a pretty remarkable thing to say when you rank it with the Holocaust and other genocides and other events. But so he said, so he wants to rebuild the Russian Empire and views his Alexander the Great and the czars of Russia and so on. So Vladimir Putin has always wanted to treat Ukraine like a subordinate entity, a vassal for whatever Russia wants. And Donald Trump, in complete cooperation with that Russian agenda, decided he wanted to use Ukraine in the same way. Now, Congress had voted hundreds of millions of dollars in security, economic, and strategic assistance to President Zelensky in Ukraine, precisely to defend itself against Russian imperial aggression. And that was the moment when Trump decided, oh, we're going to hold this up until you do us a little favor. And what was the favor? He wanted Zelensky to say that to either launch a criminal investigation of Joe Biden, or when they balked at that, he said, just make an announcement that there's a criminal investigation. Leave the rest to us. The same way he said to the people at the Justice Department, well, just say that there was corruption in the election and then leave the rest to me and my friends in the House. We'll be able to take it from there in terms of stealing the election away from the people. So that Ukraine shakedown was all part of this working agreement between Trump and Putin. We're going to use Ukraine for our own purposes. Putin, of course, wants it to be part of Greater Russia. Trump, who is in every case sympathetic to Putin, didn't want the money which Congress had voted for Ukraine to be going over there, but said he was going to hold it up until he got what he needed to guarantee his reelection. So that was the beginning of it. Then when Biden is clearly going to be Trump's opponent in 2020, that's when he deputizes Rudy Giuliani and his right-hand man, Lev Parnas, to go gallivanting around Europe and Ukraine. They had an opening. Why? Because Hunter Biden had decided to go on the board of the Burisma Corporation. So then they concocted a story that Joe Biden had intervened to stop an anti-corruption prosecution from taking place in Ukraine, which was fabricated out of thin air. And I hold no brief for Hunter Biden joining that corporate board or any other by using his father's name. And if we want to talk about influence peddling and the abuse of presidential names or whatever, fine, it's a separate conversation. We've got a whole special counsel who's working on Hunter Biden, who's already brought charges against him, gun charges, which in any other scenario, the Republicans would be totally ballistic about and would be denouncing and abhorring, but they support it in that case. And of course, our position is we support the rule of law across the board. If Hunter Biden engaged in violations of law, then he should be prosecuted and he should pay the consequences if he's found guilty by a jury of his peers after his presumption of innocence is honored and his due process rights are honored. Our Republican colleagues will never say that. Even Donald Trump gets the presumption of innocence and he gets due process rights. But if he goes through all that and he's found guilty of, for example, being a sexual abuser and a defamer of women or a fraudulent inflator of the value of his properties, they say he's the victim. He's a victim. In other words, Donald Trump can never be guilty of anything, even when you have a jury of his peers indicting him and a jury of his peers finding him guilty.
Didn't your committee colleague ask for a show of hands from all the members of the committee who agreed that if Hunter Biden is found guilty, he should face the consequences of law, and if Donald Trump is found guilty, he should face the consequences of law? Who would agree with that? And all the Democrats raised their hands. Yep, the law should apply. And all the Republicans were...
Will members of the Oversight Committee please raise your hand if you believe both Hunter and Trump should be held accountable for any of the indictments against them if convicted by a jury of their peers?
Bueller. Bueller. Bueller.
Raise your hand if you think that equal justice under the law applies and Trump should be held accountable.
Bueller.
I think it is worse than embarrassing that Republicans won't raise their hands.
None of the Republicans raised their hands, except I did see Chairman Comer began to raise his hand. It was like halfway up and he looked around and then he put it down quickly.
My friend Greg Oliard, novelist, brilliant guy. He has followed up the Trump-Russia connection in his great Substack, and for years now, tweeted out earlier, you know what, they may as well just pick Vladimir Putin as Speaker of the House and cut out the middleman. I don't think it'd be said any better than that. Donald Trump wants Jim Jordan there because he is a Putin stooge. You can't understand any of this without understanding all of it. And in the end, there's no rule of law. There's the rule of Putin. And you were showing that at the end there. If Donald Trump were found guilty, would every Republican support that? And not one of them raised their hand except for that little squirrely coward, James Comer, who apparently, according to Jamie Raskin, started to raise his hand, but like a kid scared to answer a math question in a classroom. Is toddlers, because that's who they are. They are cowards. They're owned by Putin. We got to win back the majority next year, guys. We got to end this.